Good morning, Little Masters. Welcome back to today's Tolkien Times. I'm the Man of the West, also from the Prancing Pony podcast. Let's go ahead and wrap up week 21 with Silmarillion Saturday. Now, Saturdays are our chance to revisit the history and legends of the Elder Days, whether we pull them from the Silmarillion, unfinished tales, or something else. Now, I will continue on my little Fëanor kick here as I continue reading of the Silmarils and the unrest of the Noldor. Last week, we stopped after reading about how Melkor used his influence and ability to sow lies in secret to encourage the Noldor to craft weapons for the first time, and how Fëanor promised to deliver the Noldor from their alleged thralldom. Well, let's continue as we watch Fëanor use one of those weapons to cause a little bit of family disunity. Then there was great unrest in Tirion, and Finwë was troubled, and he summoned all his lords to council. But Fingolfin hastened to his halls and stood before him, saying, "King and father, wilt thou not restrain the pride of our brother Finwë, who is called the Spirit of Fire all too truly? By what right does he speak for all our people as if he were king? Thou it was who long ago spoke before the Quendi, bidding them accept the summons of the Valar to Aman. Thou it was that led the Noldor upon the long road through the perils of Middle-earth to the light of Eldamar. If thou dost not now repent of it, 2 sons at least thou hast to honor thy words." But even as Fingolfin spoke, Fëanor strode into the chamber, and he was fully armed, his high helm upon his head, and at his side a mighty sword. "So it is even as I guessed," he said. "My half-brother would be before me with my father, in this as in all other matters." Then turning upon Fingolfin, he drew his sword, crying, "Get thee gone, and take thy due place." Fingolfin bowed before Finwë, and without word or glance to Fëanor, he went from the chamber. But Fëanor followed him, and at the door of the king's house he stayed him, and the point of his bright sword he set against Fingolfin's breast. "See, half-brother," he said, "this is sharper than thy tongue. Try but once more to usurp my place and the love of my father, and maybe it will rid the Noldor of one who seeks to be the master of thralls." These words were heard by many, for the house of Finwë was in the great square beneath the Mindon. But again Fingolfin made no answer, and passing through the throng in silence, he went to seek Finarfin his brother. Now the unrest of the Noldor was not indeed hidden from the Valar, but its seed had been sown in the dark. And therefore, since Fëanor first spoke openly against them, they judged that he was the mover of discontent, being eminent in self-will and arrogance, though all the Noldor had become proud. And Manwë was grieved, but he watched and said no word. The Valar had brought the Eldar to their land freely, to dwell or to depart, and though they might judge departure to be folly, they might not restrain them from it. But now the deeds of Fëanor could not be passed over, and the Valar were angered and dismayed, and he was summoned to appear before them at the gates of Valmar, to answer for all his words and deeds. There also were summoned all others who had any part in this matter or any knowledge of it, and Fëanor, standing before Mandos in the Ring of Doom, was commanded to answer all that was asked of him. Then at last the root was laid bare, and the malice of Melkor revealed. And straightway Tulkas left the council to lay hands upon him and bring him again to judgment. But Fëanor was not held guiltless, for he it was that had broken the peace of Valinor and drawn his sword upon his kinsman. And Mandos said to him, "Thou speakest of thralldom. If thralldom it be, thou canst not escape it. For Manwë is king of Arda, and not of Aman only. And this deed was unlawful, whether in Aman or not in Aman. Therefore this doom is now made. For 12 years thou shalt leave Tirion, where this threat was uttered. In that time take counsel with thyself, and remember who and what thou art. But after that time this matter shall be set in peace and held redressed, if others will release thee." Then Fingolfin said, "I will release my brother." But Fëanor spoke no word in answer, standing silent before the Valar. Then he turned and left the council and departed from Valmar. With him into banishment went his 7 sons, and northward in Valinor they made a strong place and treasury in the hills, and there at Formenos a multitude of gems were laid in hoard, and weapons also, and the Silmarils were shut in a chamber of iron. Thither also came Finwë the king, because of the love that he bore to Fëanor, and Fingolfin ruled the Noldor in Tirion. Thus the lies of Melkor were made true in seeming, though Fëanor by his own deeds had brought this thing to pass, and the bitterness that Melkor had sown endured, and lived still long afterwards between the sons of Fingolfin and Fëanor. Well, there you have it. Just wow. Wow. So we start just after Fëanor's claim that he would deliver the Noldor from thraldom. So yeah, that causes a little bit of unrest. I mean, the son of the king has made this statement, so that the king, Finwë, calls his lords together to discuss this. Now, his oldest son by Indis, Fingolfin, shows up in a hurry and basically tells him, you need to shut your oldest son up. Fëanor does not speak for all of us. He is not king. You are. You're the one who led us here. We back you on this whole not going back to Middle-earth thing. But Fëanor shows up and draws iron on his half-brother, threatening his life and alleging that he wants to be the master of thralls. But Fëanor being who he is, this action was done in front of a crowd, and so now we've got problems. The Valar summon him to answer for what he's done, and Melkor's doings are finally brought to light. Now, Tulkas does what Tulkas does, right? He has been waiting for this moment. He's clenched his fists every time Melkor goes by because he doesn't trust him. So he goes to hunt down Melkor. Spoiler, he won't find him. And Mandos has some words for Fëanor. Now, basically, what I said last time, thraldom. You keep on using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. I mean, Mandos says, the only thraldom we have here is that we're all subject to Manwë as the king of Arda. Oh, and you've been given a red card, sent to the penalty box, ejected from the game, given a timeout. You're done for a bit. Take 12 years. Sounds like a long time, but to an elf, come on, that is nothing. And during that time, you can't come here. That's really it. Not a big deal. Then he tells him, think about what you've done, basically. It's frankly the wrong advice for Fëanor because he never thinks he's done anything wrong. So if he thinks about what he's done, he's going to be like, I was right when I did that. I was right when I did that. I was right to threaten my half-brother. I was right to pull my sword. I was right to call everybody thralls. He's never going to admit he's wrong. So taking counsel with himself may be actually a tactical error on Mandos' part. Anyway, Fëanor goes into exile with his sons to a treasury that they build in the north called Formenos. Now, the Silmarils get stuck there, and Finwë, who's supposed to be king of all the Noldor, goes with him. So now the thing that Fëanor didn't want to happen, Fingolfin ruling the Noldor, is exactly what happens, all because of his own actions. Great stuff. Now, folks, that does it for this week's Silmarillion Saturday and for week 21 of today's Tolkien Times. Thank you for joining me. Now, please visit patreon.com/Tolkien Times to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, a monthly hangout with me, a bonus weekly episode, and a whole lot more. And folks, if you're watching this on YouTube, please be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. If you're listening on a podcast, please follow or subscribe on those apps, and follow @Tolkien Times on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.